Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we're going to be talking a little bit more about Bears. We're talking some Bulls, Cubs, White Sox, and more. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The season is going on right now, and you have Valentine's Day coming up. So tell the person you love how much you love them with some Ice Hogs paraphernalia. Get them a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, it's a great day. The Lions didn't make the playoffs. The Packers didn't make the playoffs. And the Vikings got knocked out of the playoffs.
We all knew that Vikings team overperformed, right, in the regular season, considering their defense, I think, gave up like the second or third most points in the NFL. And considering they won how many one-score games? Like a ridiculous amount. Like 11?
They were 11-0 in one-score games, which is just not that is not statistically feasible. I mean, that's an anomaly.
Yeah, you don't sustain that.
That's not sustainable. And they had a negative point differential on the season. Those two things are a huge determining factor in telling me when they played good teams, they were not going to win. And today they played a decent team and they lost at home. And I'm not shocked.
I'm not either.
You can't win with Kirk Cousins.
Well, and even with Kirk Cousins, I didn't think he played all that bad today. That defense sucks. That defense absolutely blows.
They do suck. But if you're giving Kirk Cousins that much money guaranteed, like he's got to perform, and you have Justin Jefferson, you've got to perform better.
I mean, you had that final drive and didn't come up with it. You were down by a touchdown. You needed to score to keep the game alive. A touchdown, not a field goal. You needed to march down, and he didn't do it. I mean, he just flat out didn't do it. Overall, his game was fine, but at the end of the day, that big drive that you need in the big moment once again did not come for Kirk Cousins. And this is why I think going into next year, they might be the team I fear the least. And listen, Justin Jefferson is an amazing weapon, and Kirk Cousins puts up the numbers. They can score. Like they've made it clear that they can score. It's just, I just don't think they're that much of a team to fear as much as some people might lead you on to. If that's going to be how their defense plays, I mean, they're going to need a lot of work on that defense. And this is kind of where the power numbers come in and the variance of NFL season and NFL season. And just what are the chances the Vikings are going to win 13 games again next year with this team without making a lot of changes?
I agree with your point that Justin Jefferson is elite. But if I can't be scared of one wide receiver.
Right.
The Packers are, even if they're down, they still have the Bears number.
Mm-hmm.
The Lions are going to be better, and they were a pretty good team at the end of the year. But
they're going to be a problem, I think.
I'm curious of what'll happen in the offseason. How are they going to improve? What are they going to do to improve? They feel like they've got their quarterback. And they've got some weapons around him. They've got a good offensive line. The defense was pretty bad, but you've got some studs on there that you need to build around, like Aiden Hutchinson. I'm curious of what they'll be like.
Well, and I also wonder too what'll happen with their coordinator.
Yeah, I do think that they will be the team to beat in the division.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice to both be ascending at the same time, because it's not like the Packers where you had to beat the champion to be the champion. There really is no champion in this division because the Vikings are a fraud. The Packers are descending and the Lions and the Bears are ascending. So now it's just a race to the top of the division.
Yeah, it is. And I think that looking forward, you say, okay, the Lions, I think, are going to be even better. That's going to be tough. Then you have the Aaron Rodgers drama, which once again, I need time to reflect. It's like, it's the same movie that we've seen multiple times before. I feel like it's either going to be he plays or he retires, right? I don't see them moving him. You never know. The NFL is wild, but I feel like he's either going to play for the Packers or retire. That's my bet.
I don't think he's going anywhere. He's going to get $60 million if he plays next season. He's going to play next season. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And then to go out on a bad note, there's no way. No way.
Right.
Aaron Rodgers will be back next year. There's no reason he won't. He's going to come back. He's going to be healthy. He's going to bitch and moan and complain that he needs more weapons. But he's going to be healthy. He's going to want to go out on a better note, and he's going to want that $60 million. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And he's no longer dating Blue of Earth. So he's, for all intents and purposes, he's probably somewhere on the regular train, not the special train.
Yeah, we think.
I mean, as regular as he can be.
Yeah.
But he's no longer dating somebody named Blue of Earth. That's a witch.
Ye be a witch.
Does she weigh more than a duck?
Okay, here's how the process works. You are going to jump into this big cavern and see if you fly to your death or if you fly and live. What? Hear me out. If you come back, you will land here safely, which you will report for torture and beheading if you are a witch.
Old Blue of Earth. So Aaron Rodgers will be back. They'll probably use that first round pick on a weapon, you would imagine. I'm curious what's going to happen with Jordan Love, because there was a report that he said maybe a month or two ago that if Aaron Rodgers comes back, he is going to demand a trade.
Which, why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing too, is don't they have to make the decision to give him the 5th-year option?
It's coming up.
Like in a couple weeks?
Yeah, it's coming up. Because he was drafted, before the 19th season? Was it?
So let's see. Next year will be his 4th year.
Yeah, already. Wow.
So yeah, he's going to go into his last year of his rookie deal and never started a game.
No, he started one.
Started one. Okay.
He started one against the Chiefs.
Yeah. So yeah, if I was him, I would want to leave too. Find an opportunity somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, he deserves to play. And I know there will be teams looking at quarterback options next year. Obviously, some will be looking to draft, which we hope to trade back with. But I think there are others that are going to look the acquisition route.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting because I want to see if he sticks to his guns. And why wouldn't you? And the Packers have to shit it off the pot too, because they're going to have to, if they say, hey, we're not going to pick up that 5th-year option, then they lose him for nothing. I mean, I guess they could still trade him, but you pick up that 5th-year option. They can't afford to pay Aaron Rodgers like $50 million and then Jordan Love another $20+ million. You can't put $70 million on your quarterbacks on your books. You can't do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes it so much harder to improve. And, you know, it's not like Aaron Rodgers regressing. It's not like he regressed to the point where he cost the team a bunch of wins. I mean, he definitely, obviously, in that big moment in the final week, yeah, he threw that big interception. And there were some games where they lost or they couldn't score, but he wasn't the only issue. You had major defensive issues throughout that season, and that's going to be something that they're going to need to fix as well. And I think Watson is going to be really, really good, but you look at the rest of that receiving core and you just go bleh with it. So
Alan Lazard was probably their best receiver overall for the season. Didn't end up. I mean,
most consistent.
Yeah. And he pretty much said he's leaving.
Yeah.
Because he had a quote that said like that his first game as a Packer was against the Lions and his last game ever again as a Packer was against the Lions. That's saying that he's a free agent. So that's saying he's not coming back. And so you're going to have to basically retool your wide receivers again. You have one wide receiver on that team once Alan Lazard leaves. And you don't have any money. I mean, I guess you have your 1st-round pick, so you can draft somebody, but I think the Packers are in trouble. I don't think they're going to be a stink team, but they're not going to compete.
I mean, I could kind of seeing them be the 8-9 win team they were this year. That's kind of where I see them right now. They are going to obviously be a thorn in the Bears' side as they usually are, but we're not going to look at them the same way we did at least going into the season. I mean, again, you know, it is possible they pull a Vikings type season where they get the breaks and they win a lot of games. It is the NFL, but it's not like playing them a few years ago where they legit looked like a Super Bowl contender, at least unless everybody somehow improves, but that's not how we're going to see it right now. And I think the other thing to keep in mind too is if the Packers have kind of a similar season like they did this year, where it's right around 500, there are games you win because Aaron Rodgers does things. There are games you lose because some of the regression that Aaron Rodgers suffers with age, coupled with, you know, some bad defense or fundamentals or whatever. You know, if it's like that, then if the Bears are looking to compete, it's like, well, you got to at least hang with that. You got to be within that range next year. If you're looking to compete, you want to be ideally above 500. It's a big, tall task, and we're very early on to say that. But if you're going to have the Packers be around that range, like they were this year of wins, and then you have the Lions who could potentially improve, then, you know, the Bears are coming from 3 wins. So I'm just saying that it's going to take quite a big leap for the Bears to have any sort of chance to make a noise in the division, even if you look at the other teams outside the Lions and be like, Packers, meh, Vikings, meh.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. You know, the first step in all of this is for the Bears is obviously what to do with that number 1 overall pick.
Right. And we're going to be every single second until the draft, we are going to be hearing nonstop scenarios. They should do this. They should do that. Can they do this? I mean, we are going to hear every scenario until it's beaten to death. I've already removed all the emotion of reading all the they should trade Justin Fields stuff. To me, it's irrelevant. That stuff is irrelevant. I think there's a 99% chance that doesn't happen. So I don't even pay attention to that stuff. What I want to see develop over the next few months going to the draft is I kind of want to see where certain positions are valued and what players are valued in what spots, because ideally you would love to trade back, but stay within like the top 5, right?
Oh, absolutely. And going back to your other point about trading Justin Fields, the only way they're they're not going to trade Justin Fields because they're blown away by a quarterback in this draft. That is a 0% chance. The only way they would trade Justin Fields is if somebody came along and offered them the moon for Justin Fields, and they're like, well, we have the number 1 pick. We can draft a quarterback and then reset this rebuild. And with all of these, this haul we have, that would be the only way. There's no way that they're just giving up on Justin Fields for another quarterback. It would be because somebody offered the Bears everything to trade for Justin Fields.
Right. And I think that this regime has committed to Justin Fields. I don't think there's any language, any sort of indication that that's not the case.
Right. But I mean, if somebody came along and was like, listen, we'll give you like 6 first-round picks and 6 second-round picks and a player. And
if that happened.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is you would have to blow the Bears away with an offer. So I'm with you that there's a 99% chance the Bears do not draft a quarterback, but that would be the only scenario. There's no way they're going to evaluate any of these quarterbacks in the draft and be like, they're the one. Justin Fields, peace. Like, that's just not going to happen. And people act like, well, that they have to evaluate these quarterbacks. They evaluate all year long. They just do more in-depth evaluation after the season is over, because you can start doing measurables at the combine and the pro day and interviews, and then you start debating with the other scouts. But there's no way Ryan Poles hasn't watched every single bit of tape on these quarterbacks in the draft and has his opinion about them. There's no way that he doesn't. So Justin Fields is their quarterback next year. But where I'm at is I just want Bears fans. It's fine to have fun with like online mocks and trades and stuff, but I want them to keep some sort of grounding in reality, because most of these trades are insane.
Yeah.
Like, let me read you this one. And there's a lot like this. The Colts get the first overall pick from the Bears. The Bears get the number 4 pick, the number 35 pick, the Colts first rounder next year, the Colts second rounder next year, and DeForest Buckner. There's no way the Bears are getting all of that for the number 1 pick. They just have to be real.
No, Sean, you know what you need to do? You need to make that happen by going to the Colts front office and having one of those like spinny, like hypnotic things, and you just put it in front of their faces.
I wear it like, those helicopter hats the 1950s nerds have. And I have one of those on. They're like, oh, hey, it's just a nerdy guy. And then I bend over and it's really one of those hypnotic spinners on top. And I'm like, you are getting sleepy. And
your initial reaction, oh, hey, it's just a nerdy guy. Yeah, if some guy walks into your front office, like in the corporate offices, instead of saying, who the hell are you? How'd you get in? They just say, oh, look, it's just some nerdy guy.
Look, he's got a helicopter hat. He's okay.
He's clearly no threat.
I want to test this theory. It's the new clipboard theory, where the clipboard theory, you could go anywhere as long as you're holding a clipboard. They think you're official.
Yeah.
I want to start going into places wearing a helicopter hat and see if they just let me get away with it.
Hey, it's just a harmless nerdy guy.
Yeah, he's just a nerdy guy. Let him go.
Does the clipboard thing still work these days in a digital age with iPads and
I don't think so.
smartphones?
I don't think so. I think that sort of ended a few years ago. But it was a good trick. I imagine that really did work a lot of times. You just come up with somebody with a clipboard and act like you're too busy to deal with anybody and just walk in somewhere.
Well, didn't that one kid, he was like 22 years old, he put on like a doctor's coat and he just walked in and people thought he was an actual doctor? Do you remember that story?
No, but there's people that do that at the Super Bowl and just like they're official and they get into the Super Bowl. There's the guy who didn't he break into or like sneak into the Super Bowl like every year for like 5 years.
Mad respect to that guy.
It's pretty awesome.
Seriously, like if you could get away with that, I mean, you're not going to some like college game. You're going to the biggest sporting event in the world. That's awesome.
But yeah, some of these trades are just insane. Like it's fine if you just want to like play around and have fun with it, but realize that the Bears that's not realistic. But it's another thing that if that's your expectation, and when the Bears don't get that, then you're gonna be, Ryan Poles is an idiot. Because here's the facts. The trades that happen, you can't just be like, well, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to trade back. Because you have to have a trade partner. There
Takes
are
two
only
to tango.
Yeah, you only have 31 other GMs to make a deal with. And if none of them want to make a deal with you, sure. If you're like, oh, I have the number 1 pick and I want to trade back to the number 5, you could call whoever's number 5 and just be like, hey, I want to trade back. Well, what do you want in compensation? Oh, nothing. It's just 1 for 5. Oh, yeah, sure. Let's do that. Yeah, then you can find a partner. But if you're trying to get value and they have no interest in moving up, then you're not gonna make that trade.
The number 5, by the way, is the Seahawks, just for what it's worth.
Okay, yeah. So it's just doesn't you can't just blanket, oh, you should trade back. You've got to find value. But where the value might come is, depending on when you listen to this may all be a moot point, but Monday, which is January 16th, is when you're probably listening to this podcast. That's the deadline to underclassmen to declare for the NFL draft. CJ Stroud has not yet declared for the NFL draft.
Mm-hmm.
If CJ Stroud does not declare for the NFL draft, then this Bears number 1 overall pick suddenly becomes much more valuable.
Yeah. And I think he will. I do think he will. I could be wrong. I could be very, very wrong, but you never know.
I a week ago would have said, that's stupid. Of course, CJ Stroud is going to declare. But I've heard rumblings that the Ohio State athletic department is working to get him a record-setting NIL deal. So if he's going to make a lot of money and have the opportunity to go back and beat Michigan and win a national championship, and he's still going to get paid, suddenly you go, man, maybe that's not so unrealistic. I still think he does declare, but what was suddenly once a week ago an absolute just certainty is suddenly not so certain anymore.
Just like the Bears getting the number 1 overall pick. We said it was impossible at one point, then all of a sudden it became possible, and all of a sudden it was a reality. And listen, if CJ Stroud does indeed go back to college, and we have that even more valuable number 1 overall pick, could you imagine how we'd be feeling if we had the second pick? Could you just imagine?
Oh yeah. I mean, we would be just like that number 2 pick would be so much less valuable.
And think about it. Think about it. If he goes back to college and the Texans are really, really, really desperate to get a quarterback and they trade up 1 spot, if they were going to try to give us a king's ransom, but say Indianapolis and Seattle entered the chat and all of a sudden there was, what would you call it, a bidding war?
I mean, here's a dream scenario. And again, this is dream scenario. I don't know how realistic this is. But if CJ Stroud does not enter the draft, then the Bears, you'll have more teams go, hey, we need to be serious about moving up, including the Texans. And the Colts are rumored to be really interested in Will Levis, the quarterback out of Kentucky. Now, then the dream scenario becomes, well, you have a bidding war, and even if it's slightly less draft compensation, you flip-flop spots with the Texans, get the 2 spot, then go Colts. Young is gone. Will Levis is what's left. He's the guy you wanted. Move up from 4 to 2. Bears go to 2 to 4, and then get another haul. And then you go, all right, at this point now, the two quarterbacks are gone. I almost have the pick of whoever I want that's not a quarterback, which is what you wanted in the first place.
Exactly. And that was my dream scenario too. I mean, because not only are you getting 2 hauls in that scenario, you're staying in the top 4.
Yep. And I would guess, I'm going to go out on a limb and say at that point, Arizona probably takes the defensive tackle from Georgia to replace JJ Watt, who's retiring.
Yeah.
Which would leave you Will Anderson at number 4. So you get the guy that you probably would have taken number 1 overall if you stayed, and you get him at a lesser cost. The number 1 pick costs a lot more in financial cap space than number 4, and you get the haul of trading back twice. That's dream scenario. Again, I don't think it's the most unrealistic thing, but a lot of moving parts there. And it starts with CJ Stroud not declaring. If that becomes the case, I think you're going to see some teams panic, because Arizona's a wild card, because who knows what they're going to do. I don't even know how long their quarterback is out. He tore an ACL, and if you go, all right, perfect case scenario, 9 months, he comes back in November, misses the first quarter of the season or so. But I just
Kyler Murray's making a lot of money. So if they're going to get a quarterback for next year, it's going to be via trade. They're going to be picking up a veteran. They're not going to be drafting.
They're somebody. I don't think a quarterback, but I have no idea what they're going to do. They might just start selling. They might move down, try to trade down to accumulate picks. Who knows what they're going to do? Quarterback, I would be absolutely shocked if they went quarterback. That's not my point. I have no idea what they're going to do because they got a high pick and they have a quarterback. He's just injured, and I'm not positive he will play next year.
Not a lot of people are.
I mean, if you say, all right, if it's not unrealistic to say it's going to take a year to recover fully from an ACL surgery. If it's a year, he does not play next season. Because he would be back for the last 2 games, 1 game. They're not going to do that. They would have to hold a roster spot for him. So yeah, he would be done. But they're not going to draft a quarterback to replace him because they paid him. But who knows what the heck they do. So they're kind of a wild card in that way. Indianapolis, they've said that they're done with veteran quarterbacks. They're going after a young guy. Ballard he's on the hot seat. He's got to get a guy. He's going to be desperate. Seattle, I don't know. Are they going to roll back out Geno Smith? He had a great year.
You can't.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Like,
no disrespect to Geno Smith, but you can't.
He had a great year. Are you banking on that same year again?
No, you can't. Look at what happened in the playoffs.
So
they were manhandled.
So Seattle is another one that I'm curious. Are they going to bid, or are they going to say, hey, listen, we're going to roll with Geno Smith one more year while we build the rest of the roster, then go after a quarterback? I'm not sure. I'm not in their mind, but I could see them going either way. The Lions are not going after a quarterback.
They've made every indication. I can't, say 100% guarantee, but I think based on what we've heard, they're probably going to stick with Jared Goff. If they had a higher, they got the Rams pick. So if the Rams finished like second or third, then I think they would have drafted a quarterback. I just don't think they're going to trade up to get one.
Yeah, they're not going to. You're right. I could, if a quarterback fell to them, I would not be shocked if they did, but they're not trading up.
Right.
Because they've already shown you can win if you build around Jared Goff. Jared Goff is, when he's got a clean pocket, he's like Kirk Cousins. He's very Kirk Cousins-ish. If you give him a clean pocket and weapons around him, he can beat you. But the minute you put a little pressure on him, he crumbles.
I do think, though, it's more, though.
What was that?
Super Bowl. Jared Goff, he wins the big games better than Kirk Cousins.
Absolutely, yes. He's a more accomplished quarterback, but it's the same type of thing. You're always looking to upgrade over him, but it's not always so easy to upgrade. That's the weird spot that both of those teams are in, that you've got a quarterback that can get you to the postseason. You always would like to upgrade over them. Like, they're not top 10 quarterbacks.
Right. And I mean, like with Kirk Cousins, I think he's more notorious for just the folding in the big moments, where I think Jared Goff, if you give him the right protection, like you said, and you give him the right weapons, he can accomplish pretty much anything. I mean, like I said, he has been to a Super Bowl, and I think if they keep they stay successful with the system he's in, then I think that he can have more success going forward. But, again, that comes with having the right weapons around him, having the right protection around him, because if that Lions O-line holds up, then Jared Goff is going to do some good things for you.
Yep. Vegas, they are going to be after a quarterback, but not in the draft. I think that's Tom Brady.
Yeah, you're hearing the rumblings, and I could see it. I know people might say, does Tom Brady really fit there? But at this point, if I'm Tom Brady and I just want to play, when you've won at least 7 Super Bowls, I'd say, screw it, fine, whatever.
I'm going to throw another. I don't think Tom Brady goes back to Tampa.
No, I think
that's just, but the two places that make sense are the Raiders and Miami. Miami already got in trouble for trying to tamper with him. And what if Tua is not medically cleared to play? I read a report that said that a lot of teams are just, they don't want to risk the golden goose by having Tua, suffer another catastrophic head injury during a game.
It's scary. It's
Yes.
scary to think about what he's been through already.
So what if Tua does not come back? Miami can move on from Tua. And he's still on a rookie deal. So what if you move on from him and say, hey, listen, we love Tua. Just medically, we can't have him. And then you go to Tom Brady.
Well, you have the weapons.
Yeah. Tom Brady throwing to those wide receivers. Just saying, I think that's realistic. I think the Raiders are probably more likely, but I see the Raiders as going after a veteran. Atlanta would probably love to move up and draft a quarterback. Same with Carolina. Eagles.
Yeah, I think Carolina would like to move up more, and Atlanta. I think they both like to move up more than the Seahawks. I know you just said you can't with Geno Smith, but if you don't draft a quarterback and if you get similar to what you got from Geno Smith this year, then I think you could at least run another season with that and have some success. Whereas I think Carolina, they need a quarterback.
Yeah, you're not rolling with that squad next year. 10 is the Eagles. They're definitely not.
No.
If the Saints had kept that pick, I could see them trying to move up, but no on the Eagles. Tennessee, I'm going to say no. They're going to have to be in a position. I think because they're a team that's still in win now mode, they're going to stick with Tannehill. But if they feel that roster is going to decline and they want to tear down, I could see them possibly trying to move up.
That team has a lot of work to do. They 7-10. They finished 7-10, and it was an ugly ending.
I saw a trade, a suggested trade where Tennessee moved up to number 1 and the Bears got that number 11 pick plus a whole haul plus Derrick Henry.
Mm-hmm.
That would be fun to watch Derrick Henry and Justin Fields in the same backfield.
Yeah, because, I've been thinking like Justin Fields having a guy like when I was watching the playoff game between the Giants and the Vikings today, I look at Saquon Barkley. I'm like, listen, I know we like David Montgomery and he's solid and all, but look at what another level a guy like him or Derrick Henry are on. Could you imagine having that?
Oh, I know. Just Derrick Henry running for 1,500 yards, Justin Fields running for 1,000 yards, and you're just getting beat up left and right. Whereas right now, you're like, oh, the Bears had one of the best rushing attacks, but really it was Justin Fields running a lot and behind a shitty offensive line. Like, you improve that offensive line, Derrick Henry starts just bowling over people, and then Justin Fields, you're rushing for 270 a game. It makes the Bears a lot tougher to beat. And you're like, oh, hey, we're trying to kill the clock. Oh, sure, we've got Derrick Henry and Justin Fields. Imagine trying to run that option. What do you do? Who do you try to stop? The guy that's one of the fastest guys in the NFL, or the guy that's just he's too big to tackle?
Right. That's a fun dream. I remember when Walter used to do that, my friends.
I saw a video of Derrick Henry in high school, and it was hilarious watching high school kids trying to tackle Derrick Henry.
I need to see that.
It's funny. I saw a TikTok, and somebody made a video and they posted a comment. I think it was like Instagram Reels or whatever, but it was a comment. It was like, "Are you the Max Brown that beat Derrick Henry for high school, the Gatorade High School Player of the Year?" And the guy goes, "Well, the answer to this question is in my garage or in my shed." And he goes and gets this box out and dusts it off, opens it up, and it's the Gatorade High School Player of the Year. and you see names on there of like some guys that have gone on to do big things in the NFL, and he beat Derrick Henry. And he didn't do anything with his, in his sports career. Then the Texans are at 12. There's no way they can move up from 12 to 1. The Jets are at 13, and I think they are all but locked into getting a veteran quarterback with the rest of the team around them.
You think they'll desperately go after Derek Carr?
I think Derek Carr is their guy.
I could see it. Yep.
But it would be funny if they traded for Aaron Rodgers and then Aaron Rodgers left the Packers to go to the Jets.
Just like Brett Favre.
And then after that, the Patriots, Packers, no. Washington, I don't think they have the ammunition to go from 16 to 1. I think after that, it's just so.
I think Heineke is going to be their guy going forward.
I don't think they know what they're going to do.
I don't think so either, frankly.
And they're in a really bad spot to fix that. I think Washington has to. They're at a tough spot because you could take a flyer on. You hope that one of the guy from Florida, the quarterback from Florida, falls to you, and draft that guy, and fingers crossed. But if that doesn't pan out, you've got a good defense and you've got some weapons on offense, but who plays your quarterback? You quarterback was your downfall this year.
Right.
I don't know. But I mean, as far as the Bears, you're going to have to hit whatever you do with this first pick. I mean, you have to nail this trade.
Mm-hmm.
And the first pick you make has to be a stud. It has to. Maybe it's an unfair position to put Ryan Poles in, but that's really the position. The grace that he got from the last year, it's time to pay the piper. And I've listened to a bunch of different Bears podcasts over the last week, and I think they're kind of unfair with, the Bears mediocre draft last year. They didn't have a first. They got a guy who's going to, by the end of the season, was a pretty darn good cornerback. The guy who was, on the all rookie team for safety and was probably your best defensive back on the team. You got a starting left tackle. You've got your starting punter, and they just beat him up because of Velus Jones. You know what? The reality is did Poles panic because there was a whole run on wide receiver, and he's like, I need to draft a wide receiver, and he jumped at a guy that had measurables? Probably. But I'm not writing off Velus Jones Jr. yet. The last couple games of the season, you're like, okay, all right, I can work with this.
If he can even just be a decent return man, I'd take it at this point.
If he's a decent return man and he could be that deep threat, occasional deep threat, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And you know what? I mean, you could also look at it from this perspective too, in terms of evaluating Poles' draft last year, is he traded back a lot last year to accumulate more picks. Those picks were late in the draft, but he was really just trying to accumulate more draft capital. And you were kind of like, okay, you know what? This is going to be kind of low risk, high reward types of moves we're doing here. If we give ourselves more draft capital, then it's easier to find a diamond in the rough if you have a lot more draft capital, even if it's past the fourth round. The Bears this year going into this draft are going to be in a much different position.
Right. And, also in that draft, and I'm going to call the undrafted rookie free agents that you sign part of your draft class.
I agree.
Is you got Jack Sanborn, who has replaced Roquan Smith. You've got Jalen Jones, who laid pretty darn well for you. For an undrafted rookie, you can't complain about that. Dominique Robinson has shown flashes. We didn't really see a lot of Elijah Hicks other than special teams. Treston Ebner, I mean, people are like, oh, that was a terrible pick. He was a 5th round running back. What were you expecting? Jake Tonjes, they signed him to a futures deal. I think they're not done with him yet. Trenton Gills, your starting punter. Josh Blackwell had some moments on him, and you have a lot of guys that actually contributed, and a lot of those guys are going to have to improve, but you also drafted a lot of interior offensive linemen that didn't get an opportunity to play, and none of us really know were those draft and stash type guys where you didn't spotlight them because you were worried that they would get taken. We don't know. Like Ja'Tyre Carter, like those are guys that we don't know anything about. Maybe they are contributors next year.
Mm-hmm.
Like Braxton Jones was a 5th round pick, started every single game. Zach Thomas, we haven't seen anything from him. He actually didn't the Rams sign him off the practice squad? I think they did. So I think he's done. Doug Kramer went on injured reserve, which I think could have been a red shirt type situation. Ja'Tyre Carter, we don't know about. So there's guys that we don't know anything about yet. Can't evaluate those later round offensive line picks because they never got a chance to play yet.
Now, and you know what? You might find a diamond in the rough in there.
You might. Who knows? What if Doug Kramer comes in and wins that starting center job?
Right. Yeah.
But a lot of the things are grace that the teardown. We knew Poles was going to have to recoup draft picks and get the cap under control and get this team younger. So the record, we gave him a pass. Oh, they didn't have a lot of draft capital going into the draft. Okay, he did what he could. And
blame Ryan Pace for that one.
Yeah. So you're like, okay, we'll give him a pass. The free agent moves. Well, he made one big signing that he ended up reneging on because of an injury, and that cost them the ability to go out and get other people. So, and most of the other moves he made were stopgaps. Nicholas Morrow on a 1-year contract, Byron Pringle on a 1-year contract. These guys were brought in to be veterans. And some of them were like, oh, hey, this guy played previously for our coach. Let's help build that culture and sign. Like Al-Qadim Muhammad. Okay, cool. He hasn't done anything. You've sort of established what your philosophy is and what you're going to do. So move on from him at this point. So all of those free agent signings, for the most part, were building a roster with some sort of veterans with, ties to either the front office or the coaching staff. So you give them a pass because you were just filling a roster. But now you have real money. You have the number 1 overall pick. You have full cachet of draft picks. And you've been here a year. The expectations now are real. Ryan Poles now is the time you get to judge him. And did he get a good trade for that number 1 pick? Did he draft a stud with that first overall, or with the pick that he picked first? How does he handle free agency? Does he make smart moves? Now, if he signs somebody during that legal tampering period, that contract isn't holding them hostage from making other moves, because now they actually have a ton of money. Last year they didn't. So the $40 million that they offered to the defensive tackle, that they couldn't make other moves because they had that cap space earmarked for him. Now if you earmark that money and something goes awry, you aren't worried about it because you've got so much money. You can sign anybody you want and you're still going to have money left over. So it's shit or get off the pot, Ryan Poles. And, maybe we don't see the full record that we want to see next year, but we had better see marked improvement.
Right. And, again, we want to emphasize this too, that we're not guaranteeing that this is going to work. The whole point of what we're trying to say is that this puts you in the best possible position to make it work. Ryan Poles inherited a mess last year. And listen, there are things and approaches that Ryan Poles did that I didn't particularly agree with. I was not crazy about how they handled the offensive line as a whole. I thought more could have been done there. But, at the end of the day, the point was to clear that roster, clear the cap space, the dead money, get all of that out of there. And then you just kind of supplement a roster and you try to get a high draft pick this year and you go from there. And that's mission accomplished. Things could have gone bad if you accidentally, quote, and I say that accidentally, won a few games and you had a mediocre pick, or Justin Fields suffered a serious injury. Justin Fields could have suffered a serious injury, and I was very terrified the entire season that he was going to, but he didn't, and he showed you enough to be like, hey, we think we have something here in our quarterback. Meanwhile, we got the first overall pick after we tore the roster down. So far, so good. But you got to execute on this. He's got to hit a lot of home runs.
Yeah, there's a lot of home runs here. But he's got things to work with. Here's offensive line has to be the priority. Fix that offensive line. The weapons, you've got a tight end. I think you need tight end depth, but Cole Kmet is a solid tight end. He's developed into one. Darnell Mooney will be back healthy. You have Claypool. You need another receiver.
Mm-hmm.
But if you add either a stud rookie receiver or you trade for a stud, you have that wide receiver, Mooney, Claypool with Kmet. You should have enough weapons to have a good offense, especially if you have the offensive line fixed. Then it becomes fix that defense. And I know Bears fans are going to shit themselves if the Bears draft heavily on the defense, but guess what? Their defense was atrocious last year. So you need a front seven. Justin Jones, I feel bad. He was the Bears' best defensive lineman all season long, and it's in a really important position for the type of defense they run. He needs to be better. So he might be the best defensive lineman and the first to get upgraded over.
Yeah, the defensive line, it was the least productive in the NFL.
It was awful. abysmal.
Yeah, you would have absolutely won a few more games if you had a better one, but they didn't. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to have to address all those things. And the reality is, you're probably not going to be Super Bowl worthy within a year, but you also can't tell me that it's impossible for the Bears to go from 3 wins to, say, 8 or 9 wins. Look at it happens every year. Look, the Jaguars just won a playoff game after they won 3 games. Look at the Giants.
Yep. The Giants and the Jaguars, that is who the Bears should aim to be next year. And I think that is realistic. A team that, you get frustrated with them during the season. They still need to do more. You can identify holes that still need to be filled, or places where they need to improve. But when it comes to the end of the season, they compete and they find a way to win some football games. And I think Jacksonville and the Giants are the 2 prime examples.
Yeah, agreed. And look how well coached the Giants are.
Yeah.
And the Giants, like, you look at the Giants roster, you look at Daniel Jones as a quarterback, and you look at the Giants roster, sure, you got Saquon Barkley and you have some nice pieces on that team, but you don't look at that roster and just get immediately blown away. You compare them to, like, the team they're going to play next week. Like, let's be real. Who's the more talented team right now? The Eagles or the Giants?
Eagles are the most talented.
It's the Eagles by a long shot. But you can look at this Giants team with the way they play, the way they're coached, and you could go into next week saying, you know what? This team could have a chance to beat the Eagles. It is not out of possibility.
I mean, look today. The Bills almost lost to a Dolphins team with a 3rd-string quarterback.
Just think if the Dolphins could have made a few of those catches.
Yeah.
That they dropped.
So anything can happen. It's once you get into the playoffs, if you are playing to a certain level, you don't need to be elite. It's once you get in the NFL, having the better roster just gives you the ability to apply the pressure to the other team and have the ability to recover from mistakes better. But once you make the playoffs, the Eagles versus Giants, of course the Eagles are the better team. And of course, if you're betting the money line, you should be betting the Eagles. But it's not out of the realm of possibility that the Giants could win that game, because if the Eagles make mistakes and the Giants don't, the Giants can win. That's the position the Bears need to be in, that they're good enough to capitalize on mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at today's game against the Vikings, that team just schemed so well. In the first few drives of the game, they moved the ball down the field with such ease. It looked like they were just playing a scrimmage game. And it's not like you had guys making ridiculous one-handed catches or massive, just deep ball thrown for like 70 yards right on the dot. They were just dissecting the other team. Daniel Jones used his legs a bit, used Saquon Barkley when you needed to use Saquon Barkley. And then when the time was right, Daniel Jones was able to throw a strike into the end zone for the 2nd touchdown. So the way they just dissected teams apart without needing to do all the quote unquote showboaty stuff, if you want to call it, the one-handed grabs, the acrobatic plays, look what they were able to do. They were able to succeed.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's not a lot to talk about right now, but, as the weeks go on, I don't think the Bears are trading this pick anytime soon. They're going to try to create a market, and at best, this gets traded a week before the draft, but this probably comes down to either the night before the draft or draft day itself.
Right.
And that's when the fun begins.
But you know what, Sean? I think you and I have really big Bears news we got to discuss. And I've been looking forward to discuss this on this show, that these changes are going to be pretty immediate and things are going to be happening within the organization immediately with this. You know where I'm going.
Yep.
So shall we just get into it then? I've been waiting for this.
Go for it.
The Chicago Bears have a new president and CEO.
Yes.
And we have a president and CEO that has sports experience and NFL experience. A man who is respected, a man who has accomplished a lot. And yes, we can look at the whole handling of the COVID thing with the Big Ten, but I think that was a complicated time for everybody. But you look at the accomplishments he had in the NFL. He's been with several teams, including being the COO of the Vikings, who built that massive stadium. We have a no-nonsense guy in the building. And this right here, this hire, could absolutely change the trajectory even more of this franchise.
Yep, because you finally have an adult in the room. Like, I'm not shitting on Ryan Poles, but if the people above him are still the same zoo that we've always had, then you're still going to have the same monkeys running around. It's you hired Kevin Warren, who is extraordinarily qualified. And in fact, the rumors are that he's eventually going to replace Roger Goodell as, the head of the NFL. So that's the caliber of guy that you have. And so you hired somebody that's extraordinarily qualified to fit this role. It's not a guy that worked his way up and eventually somehow got the sweetest job in Chicago. It's a guy that absolutely warranted getting this and is super qualified, and he is going to shepherd the Bears into the next phase of their franchise history.
Sean, how many times have we said on this show, it all starts at the top? We said it a lot, right?
Yep.
And we have been through regime after regime after regime. You go back to 1999 when Ted Phillips became the president. He's done some good things. Okay. He's on the business side. He has accomplished some things, and he has been, seemingly a respectable figure in terms of just being a guy. From a human standpoint, there's been no reason for me to look at him negatively just as a person. But here's the thing. He's a businessman. He's an accountant. He's not a sports football expert here. And we've said many times, it starts at the top. We went through the Dick Duran era. That didn't work. We went through the Lovey era. That almost worked, but eventually it fizzled out. We went through the Trestman era, when you could have had Bruce Arians, complete and utter failure. We went through the Fox era. That didn't work. We went through the Nagy era. That didn't work. We've gone era after era after era when what looked like could be different ended up just being the same every single time. The same results. You won 3 stinking playoff wins since 1999. You've been to the postseason, 6 times total when he was president and CEO? The thing that matters the most. Yeah, Hallis Hall looks nice. Yes, you protected the McCaskey family name. Yes, you've increased the revenue of the franchise. But what matters more than anything is the results on the gridiron, and we have not seen that. Just it makes you remember and think about all the years wasted, middling between 6 and 8 wins. Just the same old directionless crap where you're like, you know what? We're not good, but at least we're not terrible. It's just all those years we went through that. And we want, and add more on top of that. All the years of dog shit press conferences with Ted and George, all the shit where you went in thinking, what's the structure like in Hallis Hall? What are we doing here? Who is making the calls? Why do we have to look for outside help in order to make big decisions? Why do we have to bring in Bill Polian to make these decisions? Why do we have to bring in Ernie Accorsi to make these big decisions? A good organization makes those decisions on their own, and there is so much more potential for the right structures, the right professionalism, and everything that you need to get better at to get better with a professional hire like Kevin Warren.
Yep. So and also you went from having questionable diversity in your organization, and now you have a black president and CEO, a black general manager, black defensive coordinator, and a black quarterback.
Yeah, you've done very well with the diversity, and I think it's something that the Bears are very proud of, and, they should be. And, not only did you keep hiring, with the diversity in mind, but I mean, you hit a home run with the guy you hired. I mean, he is, like you said, he's very, very capable of this job. And there's one other thing to think about this whole change too, with a new leader, is George McCaskey. He can truly just be the owner and scooter rider and hander out of ice cream sandwiches. There is the only time we should hear from George in a press conference is on Tuesday when he introduces Kevin Warren. After that, I like to think that any press conference at the highest level to Chicago Bears is going to be with Kevin Warren.
Yeah, George McCaskey should then settle back as a figurehead. He go to the NFL meetings and votes on new rules, and whatever, votes on the package for the television rights, whatever it is. That's what he does. He goes and he writes letters to stupid fans like me. That's what he should be doing.
Sandwiches.
He serves up the little cups of ice cream with the wooden spoons to the players as a special treat. He's like, all aboard the Georgie ice cream train.
Exactly. That'll all happen. And the face of this franchise, in terms of who you look at in the hierarchy, who you look at as the head guy where the buck stops, that's going to be Kevin Warren's job. He's the president and CEO now.
Yep.
Let him do all that stuff. And a guy with a reputation of professionalism is going to be in that position. And listen, again, I don't want to bash Ted Phillips too much as a person, but his background wasn't this. Ted Phillips should have been the COO or just purely on the business side all these years. Getting involved in football decisions when you're not a football expert results in everything I had just talked about a minute ago. Now you actually have a sports figure in here, and it's more important than ever when you have this guy who's accomplished what he has, when you are looking to possibly build a new stadium in Arlington Heights and go beyond building a stadium in Arlington Heights, building an entire district in Arlington Heights. You look at what he did with the Minnesota Vikings stadium, and the reviews are just absolutely rave. Everybody around the NFL is awed by how good that stadium is. And that's what you want to see here. Sean, I know you've had your concerns about some of the logistics, and I think they are legitimate concerns, but I think if this guy is in charge of a lot of this stuff, then you know what? I feel pretty good about this.
Yeah, he's not going to mess this up. And I feel like there's somebody that knows what they're doing piloting this ship. I do have concerns, and you know what? All those concerns could be met. They are like, hey, listen, we've found a way around it. I feel like with a true adult at the helm, they're going to have answers to the problems before they become problems. All of the options that are going to be thought of. Everything is going to go as planned, and that makes me feel good.
There's another component to this too, and I'm going to make a little bit of a Cubs comparison. And I know some circumstances are similar and some are different, but when the Cubs brought in Theo Epstein in 2011, he did more than just rebuild a roster. He rebuilt the entire infrastructure of that franchise. That team was stuck in the Stone Age. You had a crumbling ballpark. You had horrible facilities. You had your season ticket holders still being kept track of on paper in the 21st century.
Not just at the major league level, but at the minor league level too, and the training facility.
And Epstein actually consulted the Patriots and went kind of an NFL route with some of that stuff. So my whole point here is be like Theo Epstein. Come in here and be like, why the hell is this running this way? Why the hell is this running that way? And I think that we're seeing more and more signs over the past few years that the Bears might actually be learning something here, learning that their traditional ways, the way they saw things, this isn't working anymore. If I'm George McCaskey, I let Kevin Warren go in there and I say, restructure everything if you need to, do what you need to do to make this better, go in, reevaluate, look at every nook and cranny and do what you need to do.
Totally agree. Absolutely agree. So hopefully that's what happens. And I can't imagine Kevin Warren taking this job if he doesn't have that authority to do these things.
No, and I think that I feel confident that George McCaskey made this hire so he can do these things. He's like, you know what? We want to be better. We want to be great. Let's bring in someone to make all these decisions for us. We're not talking about, ringing up Ernie Accorsi on his freaking rotary phone or sending an owl to Bill Polian. We mean bringing an actual president and CEO and doing the job actively for us. This is if I'm George McCaskey, this is a dream come true for me. I can just sit back and own the team.
Yep. You don't have to call the Bidwells and see what they think.
Right. Exactly.
My one concern this offseason is one of the cool hires that I think that Ryan Poles made during when he was hired was he got Ian Cunningham from the Eagles to be the assistant GM.
Mm-hmm. I know where you're going with this.
And I think that was an important hire. But Ian Cunningham, there are two GM openings right now. The Tennessee Titans and the Arizona Cardinals. And Ian Cunningham has interviewed for both positions.
And he's very reputable around the league. So I think that a team would really love to hire him.
So that's my concern. I'm not saying, oh yeah, I want this guy to stick around forever. It would be nice to stick around one more season at least.
It would be nice. I just don't necessarily see it happening. I think it's very possibly gets hired away.
I mean, I think it's more likely the Cardinals than Tennessee. Agreed. I think Tennessee might stay with the in-house candidate, Monty Ossenfort, but we'll see. Arizona, the rumors are that Arizona could announce their hire early this week because they want to get a start on, they want the GM in place to hire the new head coach. So this, and I believe Ian Cunningham was the second person to interview for the Arizona.
Yeah, I heard that the other day. So that's obviously a big thing to look at. And I think it was kind of in the back of my mind that he was going to be a candidate to get hired away going into this off season, but it's now very more real now that you actually see the vacancies there.
Mm-hmm. Luckily, there's not a lot of vacancies. You know,
No, there's
last year
not.
there was a lot of GM openings.
Yeah, because you had the Vikings, the Bears, the Giants,
I
probably
think there
missing a
was
few
I
others.
thought there was 5, if I remember correctly. But there was a lot more openings. There's a lot less this year. Hopefully Ian Cunningham can stick around for at least this year. It'd be nice to have him one more year to help in this rebuild.
Yeah. There is one more thing too I wanted to bring up with Kevin Warren and the structure of the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to confidently think that Kevin Warren is not going to cause a power struggle in terms of interfering with Ryan Poles' job. I think that that Kevin Warren will let Ryan Poles do his job. I feel that he's professional enough to understand how the structure of an organization works. You know, I could be wrong. I don't know, but this is just kind of my hope, my confident hope that he is able to not have any sort of struggle or, you know, any disagreements that could cause issues with Ryan Poles. I like to think that he's going to let Ryan Poles do his job in making football decisions.
Well, do we know if Ryan Poles is going to report to Kevin Warren? Because the structure currently in place is Ryan Poles reports directly to George McCaskey. So there's silos that Ryan Poles is in charge of all football decisions, and all the other decisions were in a separate silo. So
we don't know. We don't know.
I don't know if we'll know, because I don't know if they'll actually answer that question.
Yeah, I don't know if they will either. I don't know. But regardless of who he reports to, I like to think there won't be some sort of struggle, some big disagreement or power struggle. I don't know. I don't know, but that's what I'm confidently thinking. My optimistic view is that I keep wanting to call him Cunningham. Now that you mentioned Cunningham, that Kevin Warren is smart enough to understand how an effective structure works, and that if there's consistent clashing, that's going to cause an issue. But, you know, we'll see.
Is there anything else Bears related you wanted to talk about?
No, I don't think so.
All right, then we should probably move on to, I don't know where you want to go at this point.
Let's go to the Cubs. Big weekend, huge weekend for them.
Big weekend. You know, I didn't think the Cubs would be done making signings, but I was a little shocked at the signing that they did make. They signed Trey Mancini to a fairly sizable contract.
They did, and it was during CubsCon. That was kind of cool. I've wanted Trey Mancini. You know, I obviously wanted Abreu the most, but that dream was killed pretty quickly, considering how quick that Jose Abreu signed. And I think a lot of us were thinking Eric Hosmer once he signed. I'm like, okay, maybe not Trey Mancini. And then you started hearing the rumblings that they might not necessarily be out on Trey Mancini. And now here he is, agreeing to a term with the Cubs. And you have a guy that, listen, he's probably not going to put up the sexiest numbers in terms of batting average, OBP or whatever. And he's not the best defender, but he's got 20 home run power. And that's something that they really needed. And now you add him to the mix. So you have a guy that can hit 20 plus home runs in Mancini. I think Seiya Suzuki is going to be able to do it. You know that Dansby Swanson is capable of doing it. You know, Cody Bellinger, even with his struggles, can still hit 19, 20 home runs. So, and, you know, Ian Happ as well. So you might not be murderer's row, but at least you have a bit more pop in your lineup now.
I mean, you know, who knows which Trey Mancini you're going to get. But, you know, Trey Mancini is a guy that, before his cancer diagnosis, was a really darn good baseball player.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we got that 2019 season where he slashed 291, 364, 535 with 35 home runs.
I would be over the moon.
I think we all would be.
Yeah.
I think we all would be.
Honestly, if he gives me 22 homers and like an OPS of 780, I'd take that.
I mean, like what? I mean, if we got the last year from the Orioles,
yeah,
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you know? And that's what I tell people. Look at what he did in Baltimore. Because the numbers really were hit by his struggles with the Astros, but overall, he still had a really good season with the Orioles.
But I mean, here's the thing. Eric Hosmer was signed, but I believe he was signed to essentially a league minimum deal.
Yeah. Yep.
So if Matt Mervis comes along and wows you, Eric Hosmer could just be jettisoned. Or if he plays well too, then you find yourself a rotation, a platoon of between first base and designated hitter.
Right. And remember this too, Trey Mancini can play outfield.
Yes. I mean, he's not a great outfielder, but if you remember when he came in the World Series, he made a nice catch.
Mm-hmm.
So he can. So you does give you some wiggle room there to do things. But I like the ability to add some pop to your lineup because all your home runs don't have to come from the same guy.
Right.
You need a certain number of home runs. They don't all have to come from one guy. And now though, you've got Mancini that's got 20 home run power, Swanson who's got 20 home run power, Wisdom's got 20 home run power. You've got multiple guys that can do that.
Yeah, and again, like it's not murderer's row, but you definitely feel better about your potential home run production than you did a few months ago.
Right.
And remember, they've added several of those guys, including just Mancini. You added Cody Bellinger, you added Dansby Swanson. So 3 of those potential 20-plus home run guys you've added.
Right. So I like some of the direction where the Cubs are going. And one more piece that I would like to see them add is Andrew Chafin.
Yeah, bring the sheriff home. Show up that bullpen a little bit.
I would like that. I think if you do that, suddenly this becomes a pretty solid roster.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the idea behind 2023 is going to be that transition bridge competitive year. I think competitive bridge year was the term I used to describe it. In an article I wrote and something I mentioned on Twitter. You look at a lot of these guys that you brought in. A lot of them are just on 1-year deals. You see Pete Crow Armstrong is the future center fielder of the Cubs. He's not quite ready yet. Okay, so you bring in Cody Bellinger.
PCA is going to get an invite to training camp.
He is. I just, don't think he's going to make it out of camp.
No, but it will be nice to see him wet his beak there.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just saying, like this year, when he's not going to likely start the regular season in the majors, you have your bridge guy there. And if Matt Mervis is your future first baseman, you have several bridges right there. I see this idea as you're transitioning into a new era. You're not quite there yet, but you don't want to be bottom feeders either. At least if you're going to transition into a new era, where you are going to rely on a lot more of your young development, then at least be competitive while you're on that journey. Because with the farm system you have in place, with the infrastructure you have in place, this isn't a scenario like you need to be in if you're the Blackhawks or the Bears where you need to tank. There's no reason to lose games this year. So if you're not quite ready down your full rebuilding path, you might as well be competitive, right? That's how I see it.
And other bit of news, Kyle Hendricks is expecting to start throwing off the mound around March 1st. Which means he's probably not going to be ready to start the season on time.
Nope.
Which I don't think. Did we actually think he would be?
Yeah, we had our doubts. And I mean, he was kind of the guy you pushed aside a little bit in terms of the making of the future rotation on opening day. Because you're like, all right, you got Stroman, you got Steele, you got Tyone. Do you put Kyle Hendricks? Where do you put him? And, right now you're not going to do that because he's not going to be ready. So,
I mean, if you could have Kyle Hendricks and you could use him sparingly, and keep him healthy and he's somewhat effective, I think that's a win. Where you don't have to rely on him, where he is your sixth starter or your starter when somebody goes on the DL or has to miss a start. I think that's a win for you.
Yeah, I think so.
He's going to be better than, a minor league option that you have, or stretching somebody out, and keeps him healthy. So yeah, I'm okay with that. And, hopefully he comes back and that shoulder is 100% and he starts looking like Kyle Hendricks again.
I have one kind of random Cubs thought that I had today that I kind of want to get your opinion on.
Okay.
We kind of talked about this being that competitive bridge year. And one thing that I think is notable for the Cubs is they have some starting pitching prospects that are hopefully right on the cusp of making an impact on the majors. This includes guys like Jordan Wicks, their first round pick from the other year. And maybe there still is that possibility that Caleb Killian ends up being a guy. I think he's got the stuff to be the guy. The big thing with his first tenure in the majors is he struggled with command a little bit, but I think the stuff is there. So let's say it's mid-season and you are competing. You're not miles ahead in the division. You're not miles behind. You're competing, but you're having these pitchers come up and being effective and showing you every reason to believe that they are going to be an effective part of your game, of your team. And expectations are going to be competitive. It might not necessarily World Series, but competitive. So there is some pressure, but there's not a ton of pressure. If you have this surplus of guys coming up, do you say, you know what? Marcus Stroman, he's on a short year deal. He's a veteran. Do you consider, depending on the position you're in saying, you know what? We're going to go for it, but we're also going to make a few deals to acquire a few assets. Is Marcus Stroman someone you kind of do what the Blue Jays did with a few years ago, where you're not out of a race, but you consider trading him?
I think so. I think that's a real possibility, especially even if you're in the hunt for a postseason. If you don't feel the realistic possibility of actually winning the World Series, and we know what that feels like. We know the difference between like what it feels like, hey, we could do this, versus we should just be happy we got here. And if you feel like, oh yeah, we're the latter, then why wouldn't you get what you can and then give the opportunity for the younger pitchers?
And And I wouldn't necessarily force anything, but it's something you got to keep in mind, right?
No, it's got to be on the table. Like, you're silly to. I mean, that's part of the reason that you signed him to that deal, is, the ability to flip him if you want to.
Right.
So I think you're silly to not. I mean, I don't put it in the category of, oh yeah, this is a move you have to do, or the expected move. But if an offer arises and you're like, okay, we do like, Jordan Wicks or Ben Brown, or Caleb Killian, we expect one of those guys to step up. And you're like, well, that's the future, not Stroman. Then you got to consider it.
Right. Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
Cubs also made some moves today in international signings.
They did.
They got 3 of the top 50 international players. I'm probably going to butcher their names, but the number 6 overall prospect is shortstop Dernish Valdez. They got the number 14 overall player, who's a shortstop, in Ludwig Espinoza, and the number 19 overall player, Angels Cepeda. All 3 guys figure to be middle of the order hitters. And they're all just kids, 16, 17 years old.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Cepeda can play short, second, third, and center field. But they said his impact is going to be at the batter's box. And Espinoza, they expect him to hit near the top of the lineup, very likely to be leadoff because of his ability to put the ball in play and drive it into the gaps. I have not seen any of them play because they're teenagers, but I do like that not only did they sign 3 quality players, they stayed within their pool of international cap money.
Yep, more good work on the international front by the Cubs. That's really important these days.
Yeah. So that's nice. They got 3 guys and they stayed within, I think they had 5.284 million they could spend, and I think they spent 5.2. So yeah, you were able to do it. So no weird penalties from anybody. So yeah, I mean, the future's starting to look bright for the Cubs. I love the way that they're rebuilding this farm system.
I do too. And it's going to not only give you more assets for the future, it's going to give you possible trade assets to get better.
Yep. Because at this point now is you have a pipeline of shortstops.
Yep, you do. And that's the old draft the shortstop strategy because of their athleticism.
Yep. Because you're like, well, some of these guys we can move. We can move them to second. We can move them to third. We could keep them at short. We could put them in the outfield. So yeah, they've got a number of shortstops and growing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. The White Sox didn't do a lot here.
They signed Juan Uribe Jr., didn't they? God, that makes me feel old.
They signed I'm only seeing on MLB.com they signed 1 guy.
I know some have to be made official.
Yeah, they signed a guy.
Yeah, Juan Uribe Jr. per Hector Gomez.
Okay.
So there you go. So if you want to feel old, there you go.
Yeah, they also signed the 41st ranked prospect Luis Reyes. So maybe Uribe was not outside of the top 50 because MLB only listed the top 50 prospects and where they
Yeah,
went.
I don't think so.
So they got Luis Reyes, the 41st prospect, who is a right-handed pitcher from the Dominican Republic. And they spent out of their $5.284 million pool, they spent $700,000 on him. Woo!
Cool.
That's really what the
Don't they?
White Sox.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't made any other moves recently. They announced Benintendi, but they still have some holes to fill, and
They really do. And I mean, we're mid-January. Pitchers and catchers report in like what, 3 weeks?
yeah, it's coming up.
3.5 weeks. So if they're going to make trades, they might want to get on that.
Yeah, what are they going to trade?
I mean, Liam Hendricks not going to be one of them.
Right.
They did sign a minor league deal with free agent infielder Hanser Alberto.
Wow, whoopee.
I
know they avoided arbitration with other guys. That's something, right?
Something.
I don't we've speculated about Giolito being a trade possibility. I don't think that's going to happen right now.
I don't think so either. I don't know what his trade value is. Like, why would you sell low on a guy like that? I mean, I think his arbitration money was like $10 million.
Right.
Like,
it was more than any other of the other White Sox eligible players.
Why on earth would you trade a guy that at his best is a frontline starter and you're paying him $10 million? Why would you trade him when he's at his lowest value?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that they're not going to do that. And then obviously you look at other guys too, coming off career worst years. Yoan Moncada, he doesn't have much trade value right now. When you say, you know what, his value is probably him rebounding this year over what you're going to get in a trade. And, Yasmani Grandal's coming off a rough year and he's getting older. So those are out of the mix. You're not trading Andrew Vaughn. I think they've made that very clear that he's their guy. You're not going to trade Luis Robert. You're probably not going to trade Eloy Jimenez. So you really don't have many options here. And I know some people have brought up Tim Anderson, but I think they still see Tim Anderson as the face of the franchise and they expect him to rebound next year. And I don't see him getting dealt necessarily. So I don't know what you do in terms of trade. You have a few prospects, not many, that have a lot of value. So maybe you package up something, but you'd be draining what little you have left right now.
The cupboard in the minors is bare. At the major league roster, you don't have a lot to trade either. It's just kind of a sad situation that you won't pony up to spend the money to plug gaps. I don't know what they do or what their realistic expectations are, especially when a guy that was either going to be huge player and your back end of your bullpen or a valuable trade asset gets cancer and is basically, on the shelf for unknown time. So it's it's a tough spot. It's a tough spot, and I don't know what you do.
Yeah. I felt like they had an opportunity to sign some of the other guys on the market. Not necessarily some of the biggest guys, but I thought Gene Segura was a really good fit for the Sox, and the Marlins got him.
Yeah, I mean, I at this point, isn't it smart to bring back Elvis Andrus?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
he's still out there.
I just look at his overall numbers the past few years.
I'm not saying it's you rely on him, but your other option is you're going to be relying on Lurie Garcia and a rookie.
Yeah, I mean, in that context, yeah, I would rather have Elvis Andrus.
So that's, I'm a big believer in you can't rely on a rookie and compete. I'm not saying that they always shit the bed, but they're going to go through slumps in their rookie year. And I think you need a veteran there to help out.
Well, and you're not looking at rookies who are top prospects either.
Right. Elvis Andrus, we're mid-January and he hasn't signed anywhere yet either. So it's not like, he has a ton of offers to fall back on. He's probably going to be like, well, listen, that's, I don't have a ton of people fighting over me. So I'm sure he would love to just go to a team and be handed a starting spot, but that's just really not how the market is shaping up.
Right.
So
didn't Johnny Cueto also sign with the Marlins too?
Yes, he signed with the Marlins.
Yeah. I mean, Elvis Andrus is still out there, like you said. So to me, you're right. That is better than nothing. And I think that at least you can say, hey, we know he's a good clubhouse guy. We saw what he did last year in terms of that. I don't think he's going to put up necessarily the numbers, but at least if you get a solidified veteran who's a good clubhouse guy, that's better than nothing.
Yeah. And, he has platooned in his career. So you've got a guy that can come in and platoon, or take the mantle if there's an injury or somebody hits a slump. I think who he is as a person and a clubhouse guy. I think it's a wise decision and is not going to cost you an arm and a leg.
Right. Not by, yeah.
I think Gene Segura would have been a better option, but he chose not to pony up the money on that.
He's gone now.
And he is gone. Should we wrap this up talking just a little bit of Bulls?
I don't get this team, man.
I don't either. They don't make any sense. You played the Warriors, who have Clay and Steph, and you dominate them, and without arguably your best player or your most productive player. And, Vooch suddenly turns into the guy that you thought you were getting when you traded for him.
Yeah. I got to give Vooch credit this year. And I think that you look at Vooch, what he did in this game with the 40 points there, and yet there's still the times when you look at him and you go, what's going on? But at least you're getting some of the 40-point type of games from him like he got today. I mean, you're not getting those every night. You got those one. I'm just saying you're getting the good performing nights. Today was particularly good.
Yeah, today was good. But I don't know how to sum up this team because they are the most inconsistent team in the league.
The losses they have to those bad shorthanded teams, when you saw them lose to the Wizards, who had basically everybody out, when you had Zach LaVine driving and taking a 2 when you were down 3. And then, I know the Warriors are 500, but you haven't beaten the Warriors since 2017, and they're still not the easiest beat, and you beat the crap out of them today, not to mention your records against Milwaukee and the Heat and those kind of teams in the Nets. But just how many bad losses to awful teams, losing to the Thunder the way they do, losing to shorthanded Wizards teams, just those types of games drive you crazy. If you cut those losses in half, you're feeling pretty solid about your postseason chances.
Oh yeah, it's just they can't put it together, and you still don't know who Pat Williams is. You still don't know. Like, he had a great game against the Thunder and a loss, but then he just goes silent again. And it's frustrating because you see guys that the Bulls give up on go elsewhere and resurrect their careers. Lauri Markkanen is turning into a dude.
He's in the right system. He's in the right environment. He's in the right area with coaching. I think the Bulls really effed him up. They really, really effed that up. And that's a big stain on them. Because what did he drop? 49 the other night?
Yeah, he's playing like the guy that we thought we were getting, and the Bulls couldn't do it. And that's an indictment on the Bulls organization. You know, I'm going to be honest here, is what I want to say in AK I trust, but what am I trusting in? They're not developing players. They're stuck in mediocrity. They gave up a huge haul for Vooch that, you know, I like Vooch. I have no issues with Vooch, but what you gave up for him was not worth what you got. And you're not going to have a first round pick this year unless some miracle you win the draft lottery, because your first round pick, unless it's a top 4, is going to Orlando. And right now your best odds are picking 9th. So you would go to Orlando. So unless you hit a top 4 pick, it's going to Orlando. So you're not going to have a first round pick. You don't have any cap room. The hell do you do?
It feels a lot like the previous regime. And I think it's fair to say that the AK era has turned into pretty damn disappointing. You had a glimmer of hope in the first half of last season when DeMar DeRozan was playing out of his mind, when you had Lonzo Ball healthy and things were clicking, and then things regressed a little bit and Lonzo Ball got hurt and you were quickly outed in the playoffs. And then you went into this season and you didn't get any better. You really did not get any better. Okay, so you got a guy with some size in Drummond. He's not, at this point of his career, he's not a huge impact player. You saw the teams around you get better. Key teams, like you saw how Cleveland got better. And you saw how other teams in the East got better. And you didn't. It's disappointing that we're in a very similar situation that we were in the previous regime.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that a lot of the success that you expected to have is predicated on having a healthy Lonzo Ball.
Yes, and that's made a big impact. But there's still plenty of issues out there.
And Lonzo Ball is now over a year removed from playing a game.
Even if he comes back.
Which he's not.
Even if he did, would you expect him to be physically the same?
No.
Exactly.
I think he's done for this season. He's cooked.
It's really hard for me to think that he's coming back. It's really, really difficult.
So it's just real tough. It's real tough to have any expectations
Night in, night out, you have no idea what you're going to see. Are they going to give up 150 points to an opponent? Are they going to surprise you and beat a good team? Are they going to surprise you and shoot well? Are they going to shoot like crap and not be able to get a rebound? You don't know what you're going to get.
Nope, no idea. None's idea. And you are far enough along in the NBA season we're halfway point.
Pretty much.
There are 82 games, so 41, and the Bulls are 40. Yeah, we're over halfway. We're over halfway through, and here the Bulls sit in 4 games under 500. So there's just so many gaps in what this team does. The bench needs to be better. They need to be better at rebounding. They need to shoot more volume of threes. They need to shoot at a higher percentage of threes. They need to be able to play wing defense better. There's just so many things that this team doesn't do well enough. And without having a good transition game, you're stuck, and that's where they are.
Yeah, it's frustrating. And you made the points earlier about the draft status and everything. There's no easy way out of this.
No, there's really not. And Joe Colley's reporting that the Bulls are going to be standing pat at the trade deadline, which is in about 3 weeks. And he expects the Bulls to stand pat, make no trades, either, adding or subtracting.
Can't say I'm surprised. I'm not saying I like it, but I can't say I'm surprised.
Agreed. I think I personally would try to sell and just start from scratch, and tank away, try to get a top 4 pick so you can keep that draft pick and then go from there. But that's not my call here.
Yep.
And the Blackhawks suck.
They did have a 3-game win streak.
They did. And all it did was just for temporarily move them out of the worst record in the NHL for a minute.
Which is why I said, you know what, that win against the Avalanche was really, really fun, but cut it out.
But they're back on track.
Yep.
They got destroyed by the Kraken.
Yep.
A not very good Kraken team. It just got destroyed.
Aren't the Kraken one of the best teams in the NHL right now?
I think that's a fluke. They got a good record. I just think it's fluky.
Well, fair.
But they got destroyed. And now the Blackhawks are back into the driver's seat for that number 1 overall pick. And why it's important to have the worst record as opposed to the second worst is the odds of getting the number 1 overall pick with the second worst record is 13.5%. If you are the worst team, it's almost doubled. It's 25.5%. So the odds of getting Connor Bedard when you are the worst record is pretty darn good. And the Blackhawks also get the Tampa Bay first round pick, which right now is sitting really far back.
Yeah.
All you can hope is that Tampa Bay, somebody gets injured and they just go on a terrible losing streak and get into the lottery.
Well, the nice thing is that at least this is a really good draft class and there's a lot of talent in there. So it's not just Connor Bedard. There's a lot of talent in this draft.
But it would be amazing Absolutely amazing if the Blackhawks could have two. Imagine if they got 1 and 2. Just but with
Sean will be playing his pipe.
Can you imagine if the Bulls, the Blackhawks, and the Bears all had the first overall pick in the same season?
I don't think I would know what to do with my hands.
I mean, it would suck to live through the process to get to that point, but it would be very satisfying knowing my team can pick the best player in the draft to help them along going forward. So
yeah.
The Bulls aren't going to get the number 1 overall pick. Bears have it, and we're hoping desperately that the Blackhawks get it.
Praying, man. I am praying every day.
I'm just though bracing myself for me on the night of the draft lottery, holding up my little pennant, going, "Go Hawks," and all my gear. And then they're like, Anaheim gets the number 1 overall pick. And then just me staring blankly at my TV screen, looking sad. And then they're like, number 2 goes to Arizona. Number 3 to Columbus. The Blackhawks will draft 4th in a 3-team draft or a 3-player draft. I know it's not a 3-player draft, but that there's 3 studs, like 3 potential superstars. And if the Blackhawks get 4th, I'll just cry myself to sleep.
Yeah, with our luck.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Nope, I think I've said my piece.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. It's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, ShyFanPat2 for Alex on Twitter, or AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like... Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down, I wanna...